We were accustomed to seeing swans on the lake, but never really appreciated when, how, and why they were there. It was one day in June when all that changed. Whilst taking a tea break sitting on the bench outside the clubhouse, we were suddenly confronted by a 4'6" swan walking towards us, then stopping 4 from our bench. Now, when you are sitting, your height is around 3'6", which makes a standing 4'6" male swan 1 taller, and when he is only 4 away, you take notice. Not realizing that he just wanted some company, we were initially apprehensive of his intentions. It was at this point we started to ask questions regarding his presence. It transpired that he was the resident male, a position he claimed from his father the previous season. We have also since learnt that a pair of swans usually claims a lake from their parents when they are mature enough to win control of the lake. This male is around 7 years old. Over the following week, we paid attention to his movements, and were pleased to see that his mate was nursing 6 eggs on a nest close to the club. We observed also that he was continually policing the lake for any threats to his family. He always found time to come and see us, in between taking his turn on the nest to allow his partner a break. We also noted how the female would cover the eggs with foliage to conceal them, to allow the pair time to feed together. This is their first year of breeding, and their inexperience showed with the position of their nest, next to a road and in full view of everything. Next year, they will be more particular. A significant factor soon became apparent. They were devoted to each other and were really intent on making this partnership successful. The mother was so devoted she rarely left the nest and welcomed any supplementary food, which we provided. Understandably, she was far more cautious than the father, but seemed reassured when she could see how comfortable he was with us. So, naturally, we were over the moon when a week went by, and the proud mom was happy to stand and reveal her eggs to us when we were close by. The eggs were a mottled, pale green color. We were by this time completely absorbed with this expectant family, noting their routines as well as their characters and personalities. Can you imagine how rewarding it was when we finally saw the young hatch? The very proud mum revealed 4 squeaking, wriggling, downy gray cygnets. The cygnets could only have been introduced to their surroundings for 2 weeks before tragedy struck. We arrived one Friday morning to find Dad alone on the grass area by the start hut. He was clearly in pain and distress. The RSPCA was called immediately to ask for assistance. It was concerning to note that they could only locate the Whitefriars Lake on their system by postcode, which we obviously quoted. However, they could not recognize it. It seemed they could not help but said they would get back to us. During our wait, Mum and the 4 cygnets arrived to sit with Dad. 3 more very frustrating phone calls, and 4 hours later, help arrived in the form of the Southwest Swan Sanctuary based in Swindon, who had eventually received a call from the RSPCA. Dad was immediately diagnosed as being extremely sick and in need of urgent medical attention. After discussing the circumstances of the family with us, it was agreed, as the young were only 2 weeks old and because of the closeness of the mates, that an attempt would be made to rescue the family unit. Time was of the essence, and things happened very quickly. Dad was first to be placed safely in the rescue vehicle, and he was soon joined by Mum and the 4 cygnets. The family was rushed to a specialized sanctuary in Surrey, www.swanwick.org.uk, by Sue and Roger from Southwest Swan Sanctuary. They arrived on Saturday morning at 7 a.m. Dad was diagnosed with a fungal throat and lung disease called aspergillosis and also botulism. Mum also started to show symptoms of the same disease. Both were treated, and fortunately Mum's condition was caught in time, but Dad's infection was far more advanced and required an intravenous drip that remained attached for the next 3 weeks. During this period, there were many times he was nearly lost, and despite the odds of him surviving this highly critical illness, after 2 weeks, he very slowly started to show signs of improving. But these signs can sometimes be deceiving. No one really knew what the outcome would be. What ensued were daily visits from the vet, 24-hour care, and daily updates to us from Sue and Roger from Southwest Swan Sanctuary, while all we could do at this point was hope and pray he would pull through. What quickly became apparent was the unusual closeness of the family. During his illness, Mom did not stop talking to him and remained close by his side. He was semi-conscious for much of the time, but still tried to look after the cygnets. Unusually at night, they would sleep under his wings for protection, and on one of these occasions, as he slipped into unconsciousness, he unfortunately laid on a cygnet, and sadly it died. It was really unavoidable, as it was this close communication from the family that proved to be a governing factor as to why, against the odds, he pulled through. Miraculously though, he did, and 3 long weeks later it was agreed that Dad was well enough to return to the Southwest Swan Sanctuary to recuperate. As a result of the expert care at Swindon, we were called by Sue and Roger only 2 weeks later to arrange a day to release Mum, Dad, and 2 cygnets back onto the Whitefriars water. Unfortunately, a second cygnet was lost during a storm due to a falling tree branch. However, one other fatal incident was avoided when Dad saw off a fox one evening. It appeared he was definitely ready to defend his mate and 2 remaining cygnets. We agreed to meet at Whitefriars on the morning of the 23rd of July, and how glorious it was to see the Swan family back on their home ground. Naturally, we spent quite some time observing them that first afternoon. It's surprising how much cygnets can grow in a few weeks. They looked and felt much stronger than when we had seen them last. We were eager to get back to see them again on the Saturday, and even managed a quick sail. It was so rewarding to see the 4 on the lake, remaining close at all times, 2 cygnets in between Mum and Dad most of the time. Watching them frolic and play, it was idyllic. Feeding time was an interesting affair, as we had been given some special food for them all. Although we could see a difference in the size of the cygnets, it transpired that they were a little late and needed the extra nourishment. Feeding time was gratefully received by all except Mum. She had taken on a new role and was definitely holding back. She was beginning to take more responsibility. She obviously realized before we did that Dad was not as fit as we first thought. Mum started to sacrifice her own needs in favor of Dad and the cygnets. She held back in order to ensure her family had enough to eat. It was very satisfying to know that in some small way, we were able to help them. Sunday morning, and we were once again excited to see their progress. They were all well behaved and isolated themselves from racing. During appropriate times, they came to us to be fed, and Mum and Dad seemed so proud to show off their young. They seemed confident and relaxed, and so content to be back home again. It appeared that they were all having the most perfect day. We looked forward to returning on Monday to see more of the same. Monday saw a change of pace on the water. The scouts had arrived. The Swans did not see this as a challenge and continued to enjoy their family life. We were confident by the end of the day that they were secure, happy, and content, and felt that we could relinquish our roles of overseers for that day. Little did we know how things could change in the space of a few minutes. As we were walking out of the gate, we took a final glance at the family, and to our horror, we spotted a pair of swans preparing to attack the family. Within 20 seconds, the attacking male flew across the lake directly towards the family. Our male came out to meet him, and it was at this point we realized that, as our male did not engage with the attacking male, he evidently was not physically or mentally ready to defend his family, as all he was capable of was to draw the aggressive attacking male away. We knew that we needed to intervene somehow and prevent the attacking male from pursuing his victim. We had to get quickly on the water, but all that was available was the rowing boat. Without hesitating, Zeb launched the rowing boat and himself, along with a mismatched pair of oars, into the water, by which time the Whitefriars' dad had been forced away from his family by the pursuing male, who then returned to attack Mom and her cygnets. I watched helplessly whilst one cygnet was plucked out of the water and shaken like a rag doll by the attacking swan. All I could do was to shout hysterically to Zeb to please hurry up. Glancing up, I saw him zigzagging towards the attacking male with his mismatched oars going as fast as he could. Arriving in the nick of time, Zeb managed to separate the attacking male from the defenseless cygnet. He then continued to drive the male away across the lake. As he returned to the family, the male staged another attack. Once again, Zeb managed to arrive in time to drive the attacking male away. This activity continued for the next hour until he was able to request help from one of the scouts in their rescue boat, after which he was able to obtain the club rescue boat to continue the protection of the family. With the use of a more controlled vessel, Zeb was able to herd the rogue swans back across to their own lake. All the time these attacks were taking place, the family did not leave the semi-safety of the jetty and myself. The Whitefriars swans were obviously distressed with these attacks, and we stayed with them until dark. We phoned the sanctuary and explained the events. They informed us that swans settle down at night and do not move about for fear of attacks from foxes, so it seemed safe to leave the swans at that point, deciding to return the next day at first light. We arrived back at the lake Tuesday morning at 7 a.m., thinking that things should be okay. On inspecting the lake, we found the family with only one cygnet and the lake littered with feathers. Our hearts sank as we thought the worst. Zeb started to review the lake for the missing cygnet and miraculously spotted it under a bramble bush, huddled quietly and shaking. We secured the cygnet in a rescue box and scanned the lake for the intruders. It didn't take long to spot them on the other side of the lake. Zeb went into action whilst I cared for the cygnet. He drove the swans back out of the lake to their own lake adjacent to Whitefriars. The cygnet by now had started to show signs of recovery, and I was able to encourage it to take some water and food. The rest of the Whitefriar family were around in the cut part of the lake, resigned that their cygnet had been lost. If we had not spotted him, he would not have survived the next 24 hours, according to the sanctuary, as he would have dehydrated or been taken by a fox that evening. You can imagine the reunion when we released him back with his family after only an hour or so. For the rest of the day, we just observed the family and patrolled the lake waiting for the intrusive swans to return. To our relief, they did not return that day. We had decided that if they were attacking very early in the morning, then we had to be there at dawn. We felt we had no alternative but to stay overnight to ensure there was not a repeat of the earlier attack. The family were very cautious that day and would not return to their nest. They did not see Zeb drive the other pair away and so assumed they were still there. It wasn't until 10:30 p.m. that they tiptoed back to their nest, exhausted from being on their guard all day. Having spoken to the sanctuary asking what should be done, and trying to ascertain if the attacking swans would return, Sue and Roger explained that having driven them off twice, they might have got the message, but the decision had been made, and we settled down for the night, taking turns to watch out for any activity. The next attack happened at 5:30 a.m., but we were ready. Zeb was already waiting with the safety boat and was able to force them back to their lake before they had a chance to engage with our swans. Another day of waiting and watching anxiously for the white silhouette to appear between the bushes followed. Alternating our vigil between the perimeter shrubbery and our refugee family, we were almost relieved when Sue and Roger advised they would be arriving at the lake in the afternoon on a rescue mission to take the family to safety. Dad would not be physically or mentally able to continue his days in this way. Stress would apparently reintroduce the aspergilluses, a chance we could not afford to take. There was no alternative but to place the whole family back into care. Well, that was the plan. Our Whitefriars family, however, had other ideas. After several hours of attempting to contain the family, it was obvious they were having none of it. Sue and Roger left empty-handed that afternoon, promising to return at 5:30 a.m. the following day to make another attempt. There we were, back to our post of watching, feeding, consoling, reassuring, wondering, and waiting. Surprisingly, Mom and Dad felt confident enough to return to their nest during daylight. It seemed they had built up such a trust in Zeb that they saw him as their ally and protector. They slept relatively soundly that night, unlike us. Patrolling the area again at 4 a.m. the next morning, yes, that's us, not the swans. Safety boat at the ready. To our relief, Sue and Roger were our only visitors. Our family was already up and about soaking up the awakening lake. There was no hesitation this morning. Zeb was waist-high in water one second and cradling a lackluster dad in his arms the next. Sue had more difficulty standing upright on the slipway, now I know why it's called slipway, than she did securing Mom, and the cygnets never intended leaving Mom and Dad's side. And that was it. The whole family cuddled up together in the rescue vehicle, calm and resigned. We wished we could have explained to them at that time how important it was for them to be moved and for Dad to fully recover. But most important, we wanted to describe to them their idyllic new home. We were fortunate enough to be allowed to visit the family at their new home 2 days after their relocation. We were pleased to see a relaxed and contented foursome enjoying their peaceful new surroundings. Here, they would be able to focus on each other, and the parents could concentrate on rearing their young without having to keep looking over their shoulders. They are now benefiting from a stress-free environment of pure natural wildlife, above and below the water level. Of particular importance are the natural food sources in their lake and streams, which is just what is necessary to enhance their well-being. Between October and November, the parents will be teaching the young to fly, and when they have achieved this stage in their development, the young and parents will be equipped to go wherever they please. We should not be surprised if at this point they will return to Whitefriars Lake to regain their ownership. If and when this day occurs, we will be very pleased to see them return strong and healthy. This family has had its challenges, and we are pleased they are still with us to enjoy their future.